So a couple days ago, Keith Thurman called out Terence Crawford. He said that if Crawford's people sent him a contract, he would sign it live on Instagram to show everybody that this is not a publicity stunt. He's not playing. He's serious about that fight. Well, Terence Crawford responded by saying that he doesn't think Keith Thurman is serious and that if he did send him the contract, Thurman would find some way out. He told Thurman to stop playing games with his name and said that he's a guy who just cries wolf. Well, since then, Bob Arum, Terence Crawford's promoter, has confirmed that indeed Keith Thurman's people have reached out and they have, I don't know whether I guess they've made an offer, but they've certainly been talking about numbers. And unfortunately, Arum says the money that Keith Thurman is asking for is completely unrealistic at this point. In fact, he said that Thurman's expectations are crazy. Another interesting thing he said is that Keith Thurman is a free agent at the moment, which I definitely didn't know. And if any of you have got more information on that, please leave links in the comment section below. Has he come to the end of his contract with Al Heyman? Has he come to the end of a broadcasting deal? What's the situation with Keith Thurman? If he is out of contract and is a free agent from all the parties I've already mentioned, I think that puts him in a great position. Well, potentially in a great position because you've still got to deal with the politics. Because the politics for a fighter who is a free agent are different than the politics are for a fighter who is tied down to a long-term contract. So if Keith Thurman's a free agent and he wants to fight a fellow PBC fighter, or let's say Keith Thurman isn't PBC anymore, let's say he's a completely free agent, he wants to fight a PBC guy, Al Heyman, etc. might be hesitant to make that fight because they don't have Keith Thurman tied down long term. Because if he wins, they don't want him sailing off into the sunset or signing with one of PBC's rivals, right? So they might not give him that opportunity. But the advantage is making a fight with, let's say, an ESPN fighter could be easier now that he's not tied to Al Heyman, assuming he's not. Again, if you've got information on this, please drop it in the comment section below with links, etc. Anyway, back to the main point. Bob Arum saying that Keith Thurman is asking for too much money. Now, is that just Bob Arum saying that as a negotiating tactic and that talks are still going to go on behind the scenes and, you know, they're going to revise their figures and all that kind of business? Or is he absolutely dead serious and he's not willing to entertain anything even remotely close to what Keith Thurman is currently asking for? Because remember, Terence Crawford, Bob Arum's own fighter, has been saying that he's not going to take a pay cut. He's saying that he is going to demand the minimum amount, which is specified on his contract per fight. So on his contract, he's apparently got, a baseline figure. He must receive at least this per fight. You see, and he says he's going to demand that and he's not taking any kind of pay cut from that. Therefore, Bob Arum's going to, if he probably wants to cut Terence Crawford's money, but if he can't legally, he's then going to look at the opponent. He's going to say, well, I can just about afford to pay Terence, and even that is difficult, but to pay the other guy, I mean, that's real tough, especially if it's a Keith Thurman, a guy who's a former world champion, a guy who's used to getting pretty big paychecks. That is why Bob Arum is once again starting to talk about the Kell Brook fight. Because you have to imagine that at this stage, Kell Brook is going to come cheaper than Keith Thurman. Because Kell Brook was a world champion as well, yes, but a much longer time ago than Keith Thurman was a world champion. So let's see what happens here. Look, I'm not grumbling if it's Brook versus Crawford rather than Thurman versus Crawford. I think they're both very good fights. In fact, some people might say that right now, Kell Brook might be a better fight for Terence Crawford because we don't know where Keith Thurman's at physically. He hasn't seemed to be the same since that long period where he was injured and he went and got married and all that kind of stuff. He came back and he hasn't really looked impressive since. So and obviously lost to Pacquiao. So given all that, some people might think, well, maybe Brook is actually a bit more viable at this stage. A bit, we know what we're getting more from Brook. He's fought, when was it? Earlier on this year? Was it 2020 or late 2019? I forget now. But he did fight, and he didn't fight anybody of any great note, but he looked impressive nonetheless. He looked pretty good. And that was at 154. He will be coming down to 147 to fight Terence Crawford. He says he can do that safely. I personally believe that he can do it too. I wasn't even convinced. I wasn't one of these people that was convinced that he lost to Errol Spence because he was coming down in weight for middleweight. I was never convinced by that. I know that coming down in weight can affect fighters. Don't get it twisted. It can seriously adversely affect you if you're weight drained. I just wasn't convinced that Kell Brook was weight drained for that fight. He even said after the fight that the weight didn't affect him, that he was okay in the immediate aftermath. So, yeah, anyway, point being, at the moment, Keith Thurman looks like he's serious about wanting to fight Terence Crawford, but he's going to have to bring his expectations in terms of the purse he wants for the fight way down, because Bob Arum is simply not going to pay him what he's asking for at the moment, it would seem. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. How do you think a fight between Keith Thurman and Terence Crawford would go? Do you think we've seen the best of Keith Thurman already? Maybe he peaked in, I don't know, the Sean Porter fight, the Danny Garcia fight. Do you ever think that Keith Thurman will be able to perform to that level ever again? Is he now just chasing a retirement paycheck? Or does he genuinely believe he can beat Terence Crawford? And do you guys out there genuinely believe he has a chance against Bud Crawford right now? And again, if that fight can't happen, what do you think of Terence Crawford versus Kell Brook? Let me know in the comment section below, and also let me know about Keith Thurman apparently being a free agent. Is he still with Al Heyman? Has he no longer got a TV deal or whatever? Let me know, people. It's happening. I'm out.